All right, Jacob, first thing first, let's talk about setup a little bit. We saw in your video, ball position gets super forward. You're kind of lean forward on top of it already. So a little bit almost left side down, lean towards the target. Again, I don't know if that's because you're maybe trying to keep the ball flat down. You feel like being leaned on top of it's going to be helpful. And then the ball just makes its way up there naturally. I don't know how we got there, but we definitely see ball forward and you lean forward. So 7-iron-ish, right, somewhere in that ballpark. Let's get in here and get set up to where if we're standing, that ball is right between our feet and we're hanging something right from our sternum. We're talking about that thing maybe being a ball and a half forward of where this would hang, whether it's an alignment rod or a driver or whatever. Like that position where we get our sternum lean forward and it's hanging out over our front foot, we got to realize that our pressure is super forward, and if anything, our spine's going to be forward. And that means we're going to kick back out of it the same way we see in your video. So ball position being a little bit more mid-feet, slightly forward those middle irons, and we're going to make sure we're starting with the sternum or nose or any of those two things right there. They should be pretty close to straight up and down, or just a smidge behind that. Okay, and then when we're standing here hanging, I just let my arms hang, right, to check this spine angle and where the pressure is. Right now, man, we'd be over here because that we saw in that video, our front shoulder is over our front foot, right? We don't want to see the hands hanging unevenly on the legs, right? We're going to get a little bit more of a normal setup where the arms are hanging straight out of the shoulder joints. They should be right there. Those middle fingers should be right there in the middle of our thighs or our quads. We don't want to see this shift over here, right, where we're at currently. That's kind of the start of where some of the problems are. So simple stuff. Let's get ball position back where it needs to be. Instead of it forward and us trying to get leaned on top of it, let's get it a little bit more in the middle. Just forward to the sternum. Posture a little bit more neutral instead of lean so far forward, right? Okay, so starting position there. Like, let's just make sure that we're not creating problems before we start moving. All right. Now, currently in backswing, we see a pretty big squat into the front leg. The head actually kind of dips forward until we start turning late, and when we see the head going back. That's just sort of faking the head going back. That's as we're turning. We're not actually shifting pressure back at any point. All right, so we see this big dip down onto the front foot. Arms run up a little bit. Again, from the 2D view here, nothing looks too far out of whack, but our pressure onto our front foot has never been unweighted. What we're looking for, what we see out of like Tiger, all the guys we see in there, they're going to be pretty good ball strikers. In that backstroke, we're going to see rotation into that trail hip a little bit better. And something I showed you in a couple of videos, we're going to see the femur being a little straighter down and the shin bone leaning away from the target a little bit versus a straighter squat into that leg. Sort of an indicator that we have shifted pressure into the trail foot by rotating internally into that hip. And what you're going to start feeling is there'll be a much bigger stretch to the top of the hamstring, into the glute, kind of up your IT band. Because right now we're just squatting on the front foot and the arms go up. What you're looking to start feeling, and you saw the drill that I just did there, so as we turn, that left foot starts kicking back in line. That's the feeling of turning internally into that right hip. It's the piece we're missing, okay? There's internal rotation into the right hip, and you see when I do that, it's impossible for me to stay over on the left foot, okay? One of the best drills to maintain your shoulder and your arm and your hand structure while working on that is splitting the grip, right? You see that as I'm making back swings, I'm letting the right hand work up the shaft as I'm turning, and I'm unweighting the front foot. What we see now is I'm actually a little more stacked over on the right foot. There's definitely a stretch up my right glute and into my hip right there. It's a feeling I'm sure you haven't had. That's your indicator that you're actually learning to turn into that hip instead of just squatting on that front foot. Okay, that would be sort of some gym stuff you can do, exercises. You can do single leg RDL, so you get a 5 or 10 pound dumbbell on your right leg. You go down. And that move down, if we look at what's going on there, that's internal rotation into the right hip when I'm just holding the dumbbell left-handed and I'm putting it on the ground right in front of my front foot. That's massive internal rotation to the right hip. And then downswing would be the up piece. We've come out of that and we've gone into external rotation. So there's your movement pieces out of how we work into that hip. Hitting golf balls, okay? There's some really simple stuff. I know Jeff's got some of these drills on there. Shaheen probably does too, right? We want to be able to make backswings where we might see the left foot come and kiss the right foot. That is a full unweighting of the lead foot. And you're going to see that. I'm going to have some lateral displacement back, okay? What that allows me to do is have some lateral displacement forward and downswing. And that's what we see out of Tiger, that's what we see out of Charles, we see out of every great ball striker is we need lateral movement forward back on top of the golf ball. That's in the re-weighting of the front foot. A ton of our speed is coming from that dynamic shift off the trail foot, slamming the pressure over into the front foot. There's a ton of our speed when the front foot eventually pushes back out. If all we're doing is squatting and we have to jump out early, the hit's nothing but the arms throwing extra loft through there and hitting a little bit higher. You can create some speed there if you're kind of strong and can move the arms fast, but ball flight's gonna be super high and all over the place. The fundamental key for you is being able to see some shift pressure-wise out of the lead foot, which is certainly gonna ask for a little bit of lateral movement off the golf ball so that we can dynamically move back on top of it and cover it. Instead of being so far forward, we're actually kicking back to make room for the club. So that's a little bit of change that you've got in the golf swing. It's a fundamental change we're looking to do. You can even hit shots that way. It's even a boom, skate back, skate forward, and then being able to hit some flighted shots there. If we look at the sequence that would change, when we're gonna make a little bit of shift off the ball, sternum's gonna be a little behind it, head's gonna be a little behind it, just like we see in all the good ball strikers, slightly behind it. What we're allowed to do there is as we shift forward, okay, the downswing is happening while we're shifting forward instead of the downswing happening while we're kicking back. That's where we start seeing the club kind of sink back here, is as the lead side's having to push up early, that's when you're seeing the club get too low. That's how it gets too far behind you, okay? When we're gonna make a little bit more of a lateral shift and have a lateral shift forward, I'm able to get that club, like your words, kind of have this a little more in front of me and on top of the ball and covering the ball, okay? Shift off, I'm able to shift forward. Then I'm able to not just push up out of the left leg, I'm actually able to see the pelvis continue to rotate as it's pushing forward and the lower back goes into extension. There's my flighted shot. Okay, I have to be behind the golf ball, able to shift pressure forward later in downswing, and then the pelvis pushes up to extend the back so I can keep it de-lofted. If I'm too square and I'm squatted on the front leg, I start kicking up and back too early. This is done, and you see the stall in the lower body, and you see the arms fly by. It's certainly what we see in your golf swing. Because we don't have the time to see that pressure shift, get this club down in front of us, boom. Then you can push up into extension with the lower back and keep it de-lofted. If it's a squat on the front foot and a kick out of it, it's just the arms flying by. So those couple of drills, split grip, when the left foot's stacking behind the right, get massive internal rotation, lateral displacement. We've obviously unweighted the front foot, it's not on the ground, while maintaining the hands and arm structure. Love that one, that's my favorite. Boom. Okay, hitting some golf balls, feeling unweighted, it move back. There's your pressure shift forward or your skate forward, flighting some of those shots down. Anything you can do after that to where you're still getting the feeling of, yeah, there's a little unweighting of the front foot. Doesn't have to be massive once you kind of get that sequence, but you've got to start feeling that front foot unweight instead of increasing on it the whole backswing. It's the number one thing you're going to start seeing change if you want to see the ball come down, getting the club back in front of us with some club face control. No good, that's an exaggeration. I'm going to have to kick back, club's going to go under, fly by, boom.